Hi, I'm Mr. C, the teacher, and this is my classroom. Over the years, I've created hundreds of lessons in every subject area. So grab your tools for school and join in with us. Or sit back and just watch. And let's go on a learning journey together. Because you're watching Lessons from the Classroom. Well, let's take a look at what the topic for today's episode is going to be about. You know, most of the time when we think about pumpkins, we're probably thinking less about this and more about this. But not all pumpkins are made for jack-o'-lanterns. Many farmers grow different varieties of pumpkins because, well, pumpkins are food. Like these pumpkins. In fact, all of these are delicious to eat. This peanut pumpkin is one of my favorites down there. So today, in our episode, we're going to look at different varieties of pumpkins. Pumpkin varieties can be found at roadside farm stands like this one, for example. Find gourds and mini pumpkins and squashes, lots of different varieties. Lessons. So here we have a worksheet on a draw and write for the pumpkin life cycle as part of our pumpkin theme unit in science. Box number 1, we're going to start off with the very first stage of what happens with a pumpkin during its life cycle. So in the very first part, we put a seed in the soil. So I'm going to write the word seed. And the word in soil. And I'm just making this point form words. I'm not worried about capitals and periods. Let's draw a picture of the dirt. And we'll make a hole here. And inside the dirt, we'll put the pumpkin seed. And we'll pile up some dirt on top as well. Just like that. Let's add some color. So there's our pumpkin seed all nice and nestled in the soil. In the next stage, we see a tiny little plant that comes up. We call this little plant the shoot. So if we draw our soil here, and coming out of the soil is just a little plant, usually with only like 2 leaves on it. The next stage of the plant, we see a flower. So I'm writing the word flower. And the vine that grows. The pumpkin flower is quite a sort of orangey, yellowy color. In the next stage, we see a tiny green pumpkin. And maybe just the remains of what might be left of the flower, almost all gone. On the next stage, that pumpkin gets a little bit bigger, and we can say now it's a medium, and it's kind of a green, yellow pumpkin. So all pumpkins start green, but as they get older, bigger, they start to change color. And of course we've learned that there's pumpkins that are green when they are ripe, and pumpkins that are red, and pumpkins that are a bluish color, pumpkins that are white, pumpkins that have all sorts of things that grow on them. Many different kinds of pumpkins. And in the final stage, when the pumpkin is fully ripe, ready to pick, ready to eat, ready to turn into pumpkin pie or something else, it becomes a big orange pumpkin. And that's when the farmer cuts the vine and we're left with the stem on the pumpkin. And there we go. There's the life cycle of a pumpkin, from seed to the shoot to the flower which blooms and gets pollinated by bees to a tiny green pumpkin that grows from where that flower was pollinated. As it gets bigger, it goes from green to a medium green yellow color, and then it eventually becomes a big orange pumpkin.
You know, I love being surrounded by great books, because one of my favorite things to do is to read stories. So, let's make some time right now and read a storybook. This is story time.
The Pumpkin Book by Gail Gibbons. Pumpkins come in all shapes and sizes. Pumpkins are members of the squash family. There are many different kinds of pumpkins. Small pumpkins, big pumpkins, round pumpkins, tall pumpkins. Gardeners and farmers call them pumpkin varieties. Some pumpkins have a smooth skin and others have lots of bumps. Dill's gigantic, Atlantic pumpkin, the Little Bee Jack, Baby Bear, Connecticut Field, Lumina, Big Max, Red October, Small Sugar Pie, and Trick or Treat. In the springtime, when the sun's rays begin to warm the soil, it is planting time. Some gardeners turn the soil to get it ready to plant a small pumpkin patch. A pumpkin patch is where pumpkins are grown.
Some farmers use their plows to slice through and turn over the dirt. The fields will eventually be a huge pumpkin patch. The soil is ready. It is time to plant the pumpkin seeds. The beginning of a pumpkin is curled up inside each pumpkin seed. Food is stored there too. The seed has a seed coat on the outside to protect it. The bigger the seed, the bigger the variety of pumpkin that will grow. Pumpkin seed, beginning of a pumpkin. The food and the seed coat. Sometimes pumpkin seeds are planted in rows. Other times they're planted in small circular areas called hills. Several shallow holes are poked into the hill, and one pumpkin seed is dropped into each hole and covered with dirt. Each hill should be about 1 meter to 2 meters apart to give the plants lots of room to grow. Each hill should be about 3 feet to 6 feet apart to give the plants lots of room to grow. A pumpkin seed won't sprout until the dirt is warm and water has soaked the seed to soften its coat. Once the seed coat breaks open, a root begins to grow down into the soil. It takes in water and minerals from the soil for food. After about 1 week, 2 leaves appear where each pumpkin seed was planted. These smooth leaves are called seed leaves. They begin to make more food for the plant from the sunlight and air. After a few days, small pumpkin vine leaves appear. These leaves look different. They are prickly and have rough, jagged edges. More new vine leaves grow. Stems begin to grow and twist, crawling along the ground as they become vines. The vines grow thicker and thicker. They grow curly tendrils that wrap themselves around other parts of the plant to help spread the vines. Gold-colored flowers begin to bloom. A pumpkin begins to grow when a grain of pollen from the stamen of a male pumpkin flower lands on the stigma of a female pumpkin flower. This is called pollination. Sometimes pollen moves from flower to flower when the wind blows. Bees and other insects help pollinate too. Pollen rubs on and off their bodies as they travel from flower to flower in search of nectar. The female flower has a small green ball beneath its blossom. When the flower is pollinated, the little ball begins to grow. It is a very, very small pumpkin. Over time, it becomes bigger, and bigger, and bigger. The pumpkin's skin begins to turn from green to orange. All of the pumpkins in the pumpkin patch begin to turn orange. In the fall, when the vines begin to dry up and die, it is harvest time. It usually takes from 80 to 120 days, depending on the variety, for a seed to grow into a ripened pumpkin. It is ready to pick if it feels hard on the outside and sounds hollow when it is tapped. Often shears are used to clip the pumpkins from their vines, leaving about 7.5 centimeters of stem, or 3 inches. The stem helps to keep the harvested pumpkin from getting moldy. During the fall, more and more pumpkins of many shapes and sizes appear at roadside stands and in stores. Fall makes people think of country fairs. Sometimes awards are given for the biggest, the prettiest, or the strangest pumpkin grown. The biggest pumpkin ever grown was in New York State in 1996. It weighed about as much as a small car, 1,061 pounds, or 481 kilograms. At fairs, there are pumpkin pie tasting contests, too. When the Pilgrims came to the New World, friendly Native American Indians, that's First Nations people, showed them how to plant pumpkins. Often, the Indian women were the pumpkin farmers of their tribes. The Pilgrims ate pumpkins every day in different forms, such as pumpkin bread, pumpkin pie, and pumpkin seed cereal. Thanksgiving reminds people of the Pilgrims' first harvest season. They wanted to give thanks for the food they would have through the cold winter months. They celebrated by having a Thanksgiving feast. Halloween is on October 31st. A long time ago, people believed that ghosts, witches, and goblins roamed around that night. Some people built bonfires to scare them away. Later, October 31st was called All Hallows Even, which meant Holy Evening. It was the night before a church festival called All Hallows or All Saints' Day. All Hallows Even was shortened to Halloween. Today, Halloween is celebrated in different ways. How to carve a pumpkin. Number 1. Always have an adult help you. Number 2. Take a knife that is not too sharp or a special cutter used for carving pumpkins and cut the lid off the pumpkin. Number 3. Take a big spoon and scoop out the seeds and insides of the pumpkin. You can save the seeds to dry and eat later or to plant for next year's pumpkins. Number 4. Draw the design you want using a pencil or a washable magic marker. Number 5. Cut along the lines you drew. Be careful and always carve away from yourself. Number 6. Wipe away any magic marker lines and put the lid back on your pumpkin. It's ready for Halloween. There are pumpkins. It's great fun to carve pumpkins into what you want them to be. Funny pumpkins, scary pumpkins, beautifully carved pumpkins. Always have an adult place and light the candle. Some people place a candle or a light inside and light it so the pumpkin will shine in all its glory on Halloween night. Other people decorate pumpkins with paint, glitter, and other decorations. These pumpkins can last a long time because they haven't been carved. No two pumpkins are alike. They all have their very own personalities. All lined up on Halloween night, they are a glowing sight to behold. Isn't it amazing that all this began with a few small pumpkin seeds? Glow, pumpkins, glow.
All right, it's time in our episode for this segment that I like to call the Did You Know Fun Facts.
Did you know?
You know, pumpkins don't just come as big orange-sized pumpkins. They come in lots of different colors, sizes, and shapes, and we're going to take a look at a few right now. So let's start with one of my favorites. This one actually has a few different names, but I typically call it a peanut pumpkin because, well, the outside looks as if it's got peanuts all over the outside, crusted on like peanut shells. And this is one of my favorites, not just because of the fact that it looks cool, but also because it tastes great. But the fact is, pumpkins are food. And this one is particularly sweet and very tasty. In fact, these peanuts that are on the outside is actually sugars. So much sugar in this pumpkin that it excretes it, and then the sugar hardens on the outside in these peanut shell-like formations here. So this green warty looking fellow originates from Italy, and it's again another eating pumpkin, one that's often used in pasta squashes, pasta dishes as well. This orange striped, white spotted one is paler, kind of squat, flatter one. Comes from a variety known as the fairy tale pumpkins or the Cinderella pumpkins. I guess kind of looks a bit like the sort of pumpkin that turned into Cinderella's coach. And this one's known as a turban pumpkin. Kind of have to imagine that this is the face part down here, and then this would be the cloth turban worn around the head. Okay, and so now we get into the white variety of pumpkins, and there's actually quite a few different ones. These are known as Lumina pumpkins or ghost pumpkins, or there's a slightly smaller one than this known as a Casper pumpkin. And this little one's very popular in the stores because it is an eating pumpkin. In fact, this is the pumpkin, this sort of darker orange, and it's almost got a bit of a fuzzy look to it. But this is the pumpkin pie pumpkin, used just for making pumpkin pies.
And then, of course, there's one more type of pumpkin, the giant Atlantic pumpkin. They grow absolutely huge, the size of a small car, and they can weigh hundreds of pounds. Some people will scoop them out and even turn them into boats and do boat races inside giant-sized pumpkins. You can grow one of these, but they take a long time to grow, and they're huge. More worksheet lessons.
So we're going to look at the cross-section of a pumpkin. That just simply means cutting through a pumpkin so we can see the inside. And here we've got the inside of a pumpkin with the thin orange rind, the yellow flesh right here. This is the part we eat. The stringy fiber bits and all the seeds inside. This is what we call a cross-section. And we're going to draw our cross-section onto our worksheet.
All right, guys, so we've cut open our pumpkin. Here's our pumpkin. We're looking at our pumpkin. We've got a few different parts. We've got the rind, this very thin orange line here. So if I'm going to draw my science picture, I'm going to start off with my orange. And before you see, but Mr. C, it looks all yellow inside. No, I'm going to start off because I want to add the rind, the skin. So with my orange pencil crayon, I'm going to kind of outline this black line because it's really very, very thin layer, isn't it? Just a very thin layer. All right, not going to do the stem because I know the stem isn't that color. I know the stem, let's take a look at the stem. I know the stem has got that green color to it. Could look a little white inside, but it's got that kind of green color to it. All right, so I've got my orange rind, my green stem. Let's take a look at our pumpkin again, our cross section. Now I've got this big, thick, kind of whitish yellow. Most pumpkins, it's the same color. Some of them are a little bit of a darker yellow. Some of them are a paler white. There is one of the white pumpkins out there where the flesh is actually white, but most pumpkins, it's the same inside. So I'm gonna grab my yellow, maybe my very light orange. Here's a kind of a yellowy gold. And I'm going to draw a thick layer like this. And this part here, this is going to be my flesh. Let me just quickly color that in. All right, there's my flesh. This is the part that we eat. This is the part that once I scoop out the guts, as somebody said, or the fibers, then what I'm left with is just the inside part, this flesh part. And this is the part that I cut up into slices and I bake in the oven. Let's take a look at the next bit. All right, we've done the rind, the orange, we've done the flesh. Now I've got all these fibers, all these stringy bits. Those are all over the place, so there's no order to those. I'm just going to take my orange. I'm just going to start drawing a lot of squiggly lines. Squiggly lines all over. This is the fiber. Lots of fiber all over the place. Okay? Now, the last part was the seeds. But here's the problem. The seeds are kind of white in color, and my paper's white. So if I go and use a white crayon or a white pencil crayon and I draw white seeds on white paper, I'm probably not really going to notice them. So I do a little bit of a cheat. I look for a dark color like maybe a black, and I'm just going to draw the shape of a seed. And a seed isn't quite a circle. It's kind of that shape. I'm going to start drawing my seeds in there. And I'm just outlining them so that the center becomes the white part of the seed.
And what would you say? Did you say there's maybe like 100 seeds? It might take me a long time to draw 100 seeds, but you know what? I'm not just going to draw 1 or 2. I'm going to make sure that I draw lots and lots of seeds in here. And some of them are really bunched together. Some of them are bigger looking and smaller looking. And they're all attached inside this fiber. So lots and lots of seeds. Clumps and clumps and clumps of seeds. Right? So now, when I look at my inside of my pumpkin, I've really done a science drawing that looks a lot like the real inside of a pumpkin. I've got that thin layer of the orange skin. I've got this thicker yellowy white layer of the flesh, the part that we eat. I've got these stringy fibers holding on to all these seeds that are bunched up inside of here. And I've got a real true science drawing. Okay? We talked about labeling. Labeling means this. I can draw a line to a part and I can write the name of that part. That part's called the stem. This part here is a seed. This orange part on the outside is the science name would be the rind or skin. And these squiggly line parts in here, that's the fiber, the gut, somebody said.
And then this part, which is the flesh, the part we eat.
Okay? So I've labeled it with stem, seeds, fiber, the stringy bits, and the rind, the orange skin, very thin layer. And the flesh, the part that we eat of the pumpkin.
So here we've got our peanut pumpkin all nicely washed, and we're going to cut it open, take a look at the inside, and then we'll cut this up into pieces, put it onto some roasting trays, and into the oven it'll go. So again, these hard bits that are like peanut shells, which is the sugar that's been kind of pushed through the skin and hardened on here, we'll be able to cut straight through those as long as we have a sharp enough knife here. Oh, and there we go. Look how nice and orange the flesh of this pumpkin is, and this is one of the better tasting ones. All right, we're going to cut this one up into pieces. So we're going to put this one in the oven at 375 degrees for about 40 minutes. So there's our peanut pumpkin. We'll put it in the oven to roast. Doesn't that look good? Roasted peanut pumpkin. Well, thanks for joining me, and I hope you learned something new and had fun doing the lessons. Join me next time on another episode of Lessons from the Classroom.